evening. Make sure my audio here is working properly. I'm going to keep some of this music in the background for the rest of this show. I just got to make sure I have the right levels. So let me know at any point in time if you're watching live and music is way too loud or I'm not loud enough. Please let me know. Let me do one more thing here and make sure that I know that I'm actually live. So yes, I am live. Good evening, everyone. This is Uche Njoku Sneaker Principal, and welcome you to the Sneaker Principal Podcast. This is my staple programming here, where I talk about whatever I want to talk about. It's usually around education, or at least educating someone who's listening to something that you might not be aware of. As you can tell this evening, the topic is, why do we disregard or fear Africa so much? And I feel this music's still a little too loud. Okay. So I'm turning the music down just a little bit. I don't want it to be completely gone. I want to keep the vibes here, and represent for all the richness of the continent presently known as Africa. And why is this important? So over the course of the past week or so, I would say, or maybe even longer than that, there's been a lot of content on social media, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, having to do with this summit that Biden had, where he invited 49 heads of states from Africa. And this was supposed to be kind of like a part two of what Obama did when he was president, which was supposed to kind of be the beginning of this relationship that's intentional between America and the leaders of African nations. And it's very important to say that leaders of African nations versus just Africans, because I've always had a problem with that moniker, just Africans. Not that I have a problem with being African. Maybe I do have a problem with being African, because again, it's a name that was given and not the name of the people who are there, which, if you were to really call the people who they really are, you call them by tribes, right? But we have borders. We have a continent that was defined by Europe, and then we have borders that were created by Europe. So we have these places like Nigeria, Botswana, Tanzania, and all these different parts of Africa, right? But that's besides the point. We might touch more on that a little bit later. But however, now I need to sneeze. Oh, don't you hear when that happens? You're like, all of a sudden it creeps up on you, but it won't happen. Okay, if I sneeze, I'll make sure to mute myself. You don't hear the madness of my sneezes. But we have President Biden, who invited 49. I believe he invited the leaders of all African nations, at least those that are not in any kind of conflict with America. 49 of them showed up. I believe, if I remember correctly, and I might be wrong, if you're hearing this, anyone, and you have more information, please share in the comments. But there's about 50 nations that presently have, there's 54 nations, 50 of them presently have good standing relationship with America. So those were the nations that were invited, and 49 of them showed up. Which is actually kind of crazy, right? 49 leaders showing up, and if you really think about it, those 49 leaders represent more nations than any other continent on the planet. If I'm correct, I'm pretty sure I'm 100% correct about that. So you have, 49 sovereign leaders who show up to America as guests of the United States, as guests of President Biden. And the little that I was able to get, I got a lot, but the little that I was able to understand that made sense to me about this was really about establishing those relationships, or reestablishing those relationships after Donald Trump called Africa a shithole. I don't know if you guys remember that. It was Africa, right? But I'm pretty sure it was Africa. He called it a shithole. And that offended a lot of leaders there and everything else. But of course, nothing was done about it. And now it's really about trying to reestablish those relationships. But the thing that I find interesting about that is, I wonder whether or not this is really about establishing relationships or reestablishing a foothold in Africa. Because for a very long time, America has been the primary relationship holder with African nations. You know, with America being the most powerful nation and resources and money and all those different things and technology. So a lot of African nations have looked to America as the guiding star, as the hope of democracy, what Africa could be, right? So you have that being the case. We also know that right now that there are relationships forming that are starting to, you know, cause the luster of America to kind of wane, you know, to start to kind of look a little dull in the eyes of Africans. So there's a huge presence of China in Africa. The Russians are also, you know, becoming bigger players in Africa. As a matter of fact, there's what is it called? I forget the acronym. I think Brazil, South Africa, China, and Russia. BRAC? I think it's called BRAC. It's a relationship that's been formed there, you know, a economic partnership, which if you think about it, is huge because again, you have, of course, China, the largest nation, populated country in the world, soon to be taken over by India. You have Russia, there's definitely a superpower, and then you have Brazil, the largest population of people of African descent in the Americas are in Brazil. Then you have South Africa, which is definitely one of the if you were to establish the power base of Africa, economic power base, you would have South Africa on that list. You would have Nigeria on that list. You would have Egypt on that list, and you have also the oil nations of Africa on that list, and Nigeria is one of them. So to have a power play in Africa, a power play in the Americas as far as Brazil is concerned, then as well as China and Russia sitting down having conversations on how to move forward economically. You know, it's sparking the curiosity of other African nations. Like, wait a minute, so America is not the only player out there that we have to keep looking to, and it starts to feel like this meeting is really about, hey guys, hey, we're still here. Come to my house. You know, come play at my house, and of course it's America. So you have 49 nations that showed up. But I think let me not say I think. The one thing that I was looking for in the reports about this meeting, this gathering, was an agenda. What is the established, express purpose of inviting 49 African leaders, sovereign nations, to come to America? You know, I mean, let's be honest here. When's the last time you had every leader of Asia in the same room in America, or of Europe, or of South America? You know, that's not something that happens all the time. And I'm pretty sure when it does happen, not everybody shows up. Not everyone feels that's important for them to show up. But here, 49 of the 50 countries invited all showed up, and I'm going to assume that they showed up because they want to hear for themselves, what is America going to do? You know, what is it that America intends to do in being a partner to their independent nations? And what I saw in video, what I heard in transcript, is a lot of talk about, like, you know, hey, we're here, we want to be your partner, we apologize for what happened in the past and our role in the cruelties of slavery, and like all this other stuff that I'm like, okay, we've heard this before. You know, you could apologize, you could keep apologizing, but it means nothing if you're not willing to take action to even repair a microcosm of the wrong that's been done. You know, like do something. I mean, don't apologize to us. What about the African Americans that are in your nation who are still being victimized? Yes, you might want to separate them from us and say, well, those are different people from Africans, but they're not. I'm sorry. Listen, there are a lot of people out there who want to say, you know, Africans and African Americans and Africans are not the same and blah, 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 blah. Nonsense. And I feel like I have the right to say nonsense, 100%, because I am one of the many African youth that grew up in America and blended into the culture. To the point people would always ask me, when they'd ask me, what's your name? I'd be like, Uche Chukwu Njoku. They'd be like, oh, that's dope, but what's your real name? I've had people ask me that question. What is your real name? Not as much now, but I remember in the 90s and early 2000s when Malcolm X movie came out, and there was a lot of films and media and culture pointing back to our roots as Africans collectively, and those people who were tapping back to the 60s and 70s, Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael, Stokely Carmichael, who changed his name to Kwame Ture. Don L. Lee, who turned his name to Hakeem Mahabuti. When you had people like a Malcolm X who says, no, I'm not going to go by Malcolm Little. Because Little is my slave master's name, and he went by X. X, the unknown, right? So all of a sudden, there was that kind of happening again. People were like tapping into that in the early 90s into, I would say, late 90s, early 2000s, right? So people would ask me, what's your real name? And I'd be like, what do you mean what's my real name? They're like, what was the name that you had before you went and picked an African name? I was like, no, that's my name. And because I'm African, they're like, we know you're African though. We know you're African, but what? But where you from? I'm from Nigeria. I was born in Nigeria. And they were like, oh snap, we couldn't tell. Yo, man, you sound so, you look so, and so I feel like, over the course of my life, I'm 46 years old. I've lived the better part of my life from my mid-teens all the way until now here in this country. I have raised children. I've been an educator. I've lived in South Central LA, Inglewood. I've lived in the South. I've lived here in New York mostly now for the past 16 years. I did take a year away from New York City, but across that time frame, I believe that I've come to really respectfully understand African American culture, because I wasn't standing on the sideline looking at it. I was actually in it. I am a hip hop head. I am a sneaker head. I am all those things that are stereotypically deemed as being black, right? But in those spaces, I've never stopped being African. I've never stopped being Nigerian. I've never stopped being Igbo. But then, is there a recognizable difference that, in my eyes, between myself as an Igbo man and my brothers, who only know America, over generations? And I'll tell you, there is no difference, because I'll give an example. And please, if I'm rambling, please, in the chat, put in there, stop talking and get to the point. And I'll try to get to the point. But to talk about those differences, earlier on this evening, I went to go purchase a mattress, and I walked into a store. I think it's mattress firm. Yeah, I think it's mattress firm. I'm not sure. It needs to be called Sleepy's. So I walked in there, and when I walked in, it was only one person working, and recognizably he was African, and that's where he was from. He's from Ghana, and I made the joke, who had better jollof rice. Of course, if you know anything about West Africans and jollof rice, there's a competition that's been going on for eons about who has the better jollof rice. So he laughed, and I told him what I was looking for, and he went through the store. He showed me the product, the particular mattress, gave me the price points and everything else, and I was like, okay. I'm going to run over to this other store real quick and see, because I'm trying to find the best deal. And he's like, okay. He said to me, go ahead and go over there, and when you come back, if you find a better deal, great. If you don't, come back and let's talk. All right, I bet. So I leave the store, jump in my car. I drive literally 3 blocks, if that, to Ashley's. I walk in there, and first of all, I walk in, the lady who's helping me looked at me like I was about to rob the place. Not it wasn't in my head. And I'll tell you what I was wearing. I was wearing jeans, I was wearing a hoodie, and I had a jacket on top. It's cold. I had my Scully on, and I walked in with a look on my face like, listen, I need to find a mattress. I don't have time to be playing around. And it's freezing today in New York City. So I walked in there, and I told her what I was looking for, And she kind of stared at me saying, and I told her, listen, I need a mattress in the box to go, you know. And for those of you who have never had a mattress in the box, it's amazing. They're air compressed, they tightened up, so it makes it so much easier to portable to move. Especially at least when you buy it. Because I knew I needed a mattress. I didn't want to go buy a big box spring mattress because I'm not going to do all that. So I wanted it in a box I can pick up in my trunk and go home. And they told me that, she told me, well, we don't have that. So, okay. Literally, she said, when I told her what I wanted, she said, no, we don't have that. So I was like, okay. I turned around, she's like, wait a minute. I was like, wait a minute, you just told me you didn't have it. She's like, but talk to me. I'm like, I need a mattress, and that's what I told you I need. She's like, okay, let me go check. So I was like, wait a minute, you just told me you didn't have one. So when I turned around, was it because I didn't say, hey, stick them up? Like, you know, where's the cash register? So was there a stereotype in your head of what you thought my intentions were when I walked in? So when I asked for what I was looking for, you say you didn't have it, and I turned around and walk away. Now you want to help me. So I was taken aback. You know, sometimes I'm slow to process. So she went looking for someone, and they start talking about, hey, do we have this particular mattress? You know, I think this, and I'm hearing her talk about how there is the mattress I'm looking for in the store. So I'm sitting there like, what the heck just happened here? So then she walks back there, and I out of sight, and I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, okay, what just happened here? Because I walked in to purchase a mattress, but I know what happened. My black maleness walked in first, ahead of me, and all the stereotypes of who I was as a black man walking into a store at 6 p.m. in the evening, out of the cold, in an empty store, you know, and I'll be honest with you, it was her and another coworker, maybe 3 people, all women. So maybe it was a legitimate fear, right? Because I'm a black man walking to that space. But it didn't feel good anyway. To me, it didn't feel good. If anything, it made me feel like, damn, is this what we're doing here? And then all of a sudden, I think she walks away. No one says anything to me again, you know. Something to myself, some point in time, hey sir, we'll be right back. This is what we're doing right now. Goes back there, then comes back again with the other woman, and she's saying to him, hey, can you help me bring that box out here? He wants to buy it. So I was like, hold up. Are we going to talk about price? Are we going to talk about brand? Are we going to ensure that that's the one that I actually want? And she was like, oh. And I was like, God damn it. All right. You know, okay, fine. So I indulge him further, and she's writing on a piece of paper and writing all this stuff on a piece of paper, the other woman, and then she says, well, this is how much it is. And I looked at her, all right, thank you. She's like, wait a minute. I'm like, well, your price is way more expensive than where I just came from. And I didn't have to wait there for about 15 minutes while you guys ran around. And after I was told in the beginning that you didn't have it, then when I was walking out, then all of a sudden you have it. And I didn't proceed further with what I thought was happening at that moment in time. Again, I understand, you know, big black guy, maybe I'm a threat, but it still doesn't feel good. It still doesn't feel good, you know. So what did I do? I left. I went back to my man at the other store, and when I walked in, he welcomed me. He helped me pull out the mattress and everything else, and I paid for the mattress. And for all I know, the mattress they had and the one I bought was the exact same thing. But the thing is this: in one space, I was seen strictly as a black male threat. Another space, I was just seen as an African brother who came looking to buy a bed, you know. So I say all this to say that there is literally no difference at the end of the day as a black person in this country how you're viewed. No matter how much people want to say Africans behave this way or Africans treat, you know, or African Americans behave this way, or we treat each other a particular way. I'll tell you right now, it's a lie that's been perpetuated by media. It's been a lie that's been told by people who are not black, who go into Africa and tell stories about African Americans. And those are the same people who create stories in film and in media about African Americans. The same people who push music to Africa, where you hear shoot 'em up, kill this and kill that bee, or do this and do that. And that becomes a narrative about a whole entire people that is false. The same way when media content was being brought out of Africa into America, and you saw these listen, I always thought it was interesting how when they showed images depicting or content depicting Africa, and let me rewind. Social media has been happening before we knew what social media was. Because media that's used to socialize us is also social media. So when you had video content in the 80s and 90s, all the way until now, that depicts Africa as war-torn, hungry, dirty, and backwards. And in these rough, crazy images, right? But then when they showed the wilderness, it was so pristine and so beautiful. The gazelles, as they gallop through the savannah, the lion as it stalks its prey, and and you have the sun in the background showing the mane of the lion and the elephants. It's so beautiful, 10K, right? But then they show Africa, Africans, and its squalor and its poverty and its war-torn, as though there are 54 wars happening in Africa at any given time. Complete nonsense. But those images come here and it tells black folk here, ooh, you're better than them. Because at least you're not dirty, you're not hungry, and you're not fighting for a piece of bread every day. But then the content that's sent to Africa tells Africans, ooh, at least you're not them. Because look at the way they talk about their women, they talk about themselves, how they kill each other, the language that they use. So you have these two spaces where content is being traded by who? The same middleman, mainstream media telling stories about us to each other, and then we add on it based on emotions. So I'm saying all this to say that when Biden is standing there talking to these 49 leaders and apologizing, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm hoping these leaders are thinking to themselves and will say to him, wait up, how do we trust you if you have been unable as a nation to address the atrocities that's happened to our brothers and sisters who were stolen from us, who were enslaved in your nation to build your nation, and are still last class citizens. Not second class, not third class, not fourth class, last class citizens. What have you done for them? Because listen, there's an old saying that I remember that says that man, I'm gonna have to butcher it because I can't remember the saying. But you know what? Show me it's like one of those things, like show me how you take care of your house, and that's gonna tell me how you're gonna take care of my house. If I come to your house is dirty and everything's a mess and it stinks. Why would I loan you why would I let you stay in my house by yourself? Why would I even let you be in my house? Because all you're gonna do is you're gonna mimic what you've done in your house, in my house. So again, we have 49 leaders who were here in this country, to meet with the president. There was no clear agenda. There was no messaging of how to move forward, and again, it just felt like another, what's the word that kids were using? Green lighting. Is it gaslighting? It felt like a lot of gaslighting, making you feel as though, if this doesn't work, it's going to be your fault. It's America, we can do all open arms, right? But one thing I'll tell you that I think that's interesting to say. Am I 100% in agreement with China and Russia and their presence in Africa? I have my issues with that. But one thing I will say that I've seen with my own eyes is the few times I've been in Nigeria over the past decades. When I see Americans in Africa, they move with a certain level of arrogance, like we're here doing you a favor. Africans are treated as though they are sideshows, something to be fascinated by and pitied as well. Like a gorilla in a cage in the zoo. You're like, oh my God, that's a gorilla. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. Look, its majesty is so powerful. But at some point in time, you're gonna feel sorry for it. You're like, wow, man, I know he wished he was out free in the jungle, right? And that's the kind of feel that I got, you know. And how do I know that was the thinking? Because whenever I would meet an American when I was in Nigeria, first of all, the assumption was that what? Like when I walked into Ashley's, was like, you are, you know, a threat, you know, or you're one of them, right? But once I spoke, and they're like, wait a minute, are you American? I'm like, yes, I'm a U.S. citizen. Like, oh, wow. Are you Niger? Yes, I am. Oh, wow, you speak so well. Because I went to middle school, high school, college, master's degrees, and all that in America. And I grew up in America, you know, and they're so fascinated. But then soon enough, they let go of their fascination and things normalized. And now we're just two Americans. And I am more American now because I'm in the midst of Africans. So I'm definitely way more American and much more relatable. And then their languages about Africans is very not cool. Again, that talk that kind of like puts Africans into the frame of like pity, you know. And they always, I mean, I'm telling you, these Americans that I meet always, without fail, will tell me about how much they're doing for, how they've always been fascinated by Africa, and they're so excited to come to Africa because they want to do something good for Africa. But now, others who are not American that I've come across, I haven't had the pleasure of speaking to a European while for any extended period of time while in Nigeria. I've had a conversation with an American expat, and I've also had conversations with those from the Middle East, and I've also had a chance to observe, not converse, but observe Chinese people in Nigeria. And one thing I would tell you, and I'll preface this by saying I've always been concerned about some of the images that I see about Chinese business people in Africa and how they treat Africans. And some of those videos are super old and stuff like that. And I'm hoping things have changed and African governments have gotten better at addressing any kind of abuse towards Africans on African soils by those who have been invited to do business on African soil. But now, in my situation, what fascinated me, I was in Lagos, Nigeria. If you know anything about Lagos, Lagos is the ish, man. Lagos is the shit. I mean, I'm telling you, it's like Harlem and Detroit and Atlanta and South Central LA and like, you know, and like Maryland, you know, Prince George County, like all that blackness, you know, and even and let's throw in, you know, Shreveport, Louisiana. Let's throw in the Mississippi Delta. All that just squeezed into a place called Lagos, a coastal city in southwestern Nigeria. When I say culture, the sheer population, the number of people there, it is a vibrant metropolis. Like, man, like talk about traffic. You can sit in traffic what feels like days, right? So, but if you're on vacation and you don't mind sitting in the car for an extended period of time and just people watching, it's amazing. And I'm a huge people watcher. And I remember sitting in the car. I was in this is 2007. I was there in Nigeria. We spent some days in Lagos before we went to some other places in Nigeria, you know. And we were sitting in the car in traffic. Traffic is moving like a snail, right? I'm looking out the windows roll down. It's hot. You're getting all the smells that you can imagine in a city that is like one of the largest cities in the world. There's so many people. And as I'm looking out the window, you know, I think we're stopped. Traffic is pretty much stopped, and we're on the main road. And I see this Chinese man, clearly Chinese. And I knew he was Chinese because he was with someone else, another Chinese person. They were speaking Mandarin. You know, living in New York City, you kind of develop an ear for languages. I might not understand it, but I know that's what that language is. And then he turns to a black man, an African man, a Yoruba man, and he goes full Yoruba language. And they're going back and forth. And the thing that blew my mind is that he didn't speak Yoruba as a Chinese man. He spoke Yoruba as a Yoruba man. And I was like, oh my God. If my eyes were closed and I didn't know where I was, I heard that voice, I'm thinking I'm going to open my eyes and see Baba Tunde. I swear I was going to open my eyes and see a full-grown Yoruba man speaking. Down to the fact that the bass in his voice, his voice sounded different. And I thought to myself, and I don't know this person from Adam, but there has to be a certain level of respect for the people, for the culture, because you don't have to do business in Yoruba. You don't. English is the national language of Nigeria. You know, the majority of folks at this point in time, unless you're an old school head from the village who's like pushing 100 years old, everybody speaks English. It might be different variations of level of English, but everybody speaks English. And if you listen long enough, you understand what people are saying. For those who are speaking pidgin or like in the Nigerian patois. And he was flowing. And I thought to myself, wow. I don't know what he did. I'm assuming he's a businessman. And to be in Nigeria and speak the language of the region that well and that fluently. So either he's been there for a long time, but also there's been a lot of people who've been in Nigeria for a long time who never take the time to learn any of the languages, any of the 200 languages. So I thought to myself, wow, you know, if Chinese folks are coming to Nigeria with that kind of intentionality of rebuilding partnerships and saying we need to understand the language and the culture of the people we're working with, what does that say to African leaders of who they should partner with? If you understand my language, that means you're making a point to understand my culture and how we think and how we move. You know, that's how you bridge those gaps in relationships across nations. I saw a video not too long ago that kind of upset me, and I had to step back and re-ask myself, why was I really upset about this video? And I can now articulate that. This video was a classroom in China of maybe 20, 30 students. And the teacher who's off camera is teaching Igbo to these Chinese students. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, what's going on here? And I was upset. I was like, see, appropriate, I can't even say the word. They're taking our culture, appropriating. Man, what's wrong with my mouth right now? They're taking our culture and they're using it, you know, without our permission. That's how I was thinking. But then, based on what I just said earlier, and that was later on my reasoning as I sat with that image in my head longer, I said to myself, here in America, I can literally say, I want to learn German, I want to learn French, Spanish, Chinese, if my school offers it. You go to college, all these languages are there. You know, all these European languages, and then main world languages like Arabic and maybe Mandarin, or, you know, languages like that. And I'm asking myself, we learn these languages because we deem it necessary to be able to function in the world and to partner with powerful nations and be citizens of the world by learning their languages, right? But China, they're learning African languages. And I'm sorry, the person who was speaking, teaching the class, his accent was damn near flawless. So in my mind, I'm assuming it's probably an Igbo person. And for those of you who don't know, I am Igbo by tribe, you know. But then as I remember the Chinese man that I saw speaking Yoruba, this person teaching the class could have easily been Chinese as well, who probably went to Nigeria, spent some time there, learned the languages, going back and saying, hey, people, we need to learn these languages. If we're going to build businesses, if we're going to partner with these nations, you know, and trade with them, we need to learn their languages. And what's interesting is that's not the same approach that's being taken by Americans for the most part. I'm not saying I've never met an American who spoke an African language, because I have. But I've never seen a classroom of white students learning Yoruba or Igbo or Hausa or Igbo or Swahili or Ashanti or Tree or any of the languages across the African nations, because it's not important to them. They see no value in the people of the continent, but rather only in the resources of the continent. And China is flipping the script on that and saying, no. Not only do we want to do business with you, we want to understand your culture and we want to learn your culture. We want to submit to your culture so we could be equal footing in your continent in doing business. And how powerful is that? I'm sorry, guys. My son's in the background. He's going through terrible twos. So hopefully the music is blending. Hey, what song is this right here? The song is called King Lion by Anthony Vega. So as I ponder on these visits, on this visit that happened of these nations leaders to America, again, I ask myself, like, what is going to happen next? What's going to be the end result? I was educated for a number of years, and we're all about outcomes. Education is about outcomes. I'm not going to take your child into my classroom and teach them ABC 1 2 3, and be like, okay, I taught them ABC 1 2 3. You want to know? You're going to want to know and see evidence of that learning. And also make sure that it wasn't just rote memorization, but it was actually applications. Your child can take those letters and turn them into words, take those words, turn them into sentences, take those sentences and turn them into paragraphs, and hopefully entire essays and thoughts exhibiting critical thinking. Okay, that is the purpose of outcomes, right? Same thing with math. 1 + 1, eventually you're searching for the meaning of X in an equation. So what is the meaning, out of this meeting, and listen, maybe I'm just one of those people out there who's just a pessimist, and I feel like there's always this, like Africa's always getting played in these spaces. But one thing I would say is this: for those of you who don't know, let me see if I can. Will I be able to do this? And what I'm about to do is probably just like, again, maybe I'm just, showing the obvious. Maybe people already know about this. But one of the things that I think is very, very important is the fact that oh, sorry about that. Trying to unlock my phone. Okay. All right. So what I'm doing here real quick is this. I want to show you something. Earlier I was talking about Lagos, Nigeria, right? That is a part of Lagos, Nigeria. You look in this picture right here, you probably think this is Europe, right? You probably think this is Europe. But I tell you, this is not Europe. This is Lagos, Nigeria. Here we go. This is better. Okay. Lagos, Nigeria. Okay. This is a city in this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful country, right? Let me see here. This is what people see when they think of Africa. Ruins, right? They think about jungles and huts and water. And there's nothing wrong with this. This is beautiful. I've seen the Sphinx with my own eyes as a child. My father took me to Egypt with him when we were on our way on Hajj. I've seen scenes like this all the time, but also there's scenes like this. Beautiful towns with amazing artwork. Okay. Let's see. And I want to say this is Nairobi, Kenya. Okay. If you didn't tell me, I would think this is a city here in America, right? Again, these are images that no one shows us. We just make the assumptions that Africa is actually I don't have any images of like a jacked up Africa. This is all images of like beautiful cities. This is Ethiopia. This is Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Okay. If you didn't know right now, you're not telling me that you're not thinking that's Houston or Atlanta. Okay. No, this is Africa. Okay. And again, I am speaking on this because it's very important that this is my portion of the call to action. If you are watching this right now and you're a person of African descent, regardless of where you are from the world, if you're Afro-Caribbean, you're Afro-Latino, you're African American, whatever it is. I'm going to ask you and to do one thing for yourself. At some point in time, those of you who have the means to travel around the world, and you go to Colombia, you go to Thailand, and you go to Mexico, you go to all these other places, you go to Paris, you go to London. I had some coworkers a couple years ago who went to London because they had to be there to see, Prince Harry and Meghan, to see the royal procession of their wedding. And I thought to myself, you spent all that money to play hooky from work, to go to London to see that, as two black women. And I'm asking myself, I wonder what your experience would have been like if you had gone to Johannesburg, South Africa, or Accra, Ghana, and be in a space where you can breathe, where you're not just them, the other people. Every time I go to Nigeria, and it's been a while. I think last time was 2014, and then career promotions happen, and pandemic happened, and all that stuff. So I'm crossing my fingers. I'm planning to make a journey in 2023. All the times I've been to Nigeria, or even the one. I've been to Accra once in Ghana. There's a feeling that you just can't know until you're there. And the only way I can vocalize that feeling is breath. That release of breath. Okay? Especially if you go with the intention that I'm not walking into a foreign planet. I'm walking into a space where I'm not others. I'm us. I remember the first time I had that feeling. Really had that feeling, was actually here in America. And I'll tell you when it was. The year was 1999. And I attended the University of Rochester, upstate New York. And a buddy of mine, James, he invited me to spend Thanksgiving with him and his father in Harlem. And I had never been to Harlem. In all reality, I had never been to New York City. Let me take that back. I've been to New York City when I was really, really young. We flew into Brooklyn when we first came from Nigeria. So that wasn't really being in New York City. That was just kind of like a flyby. It was freezing, and my mom couldn't handle it, so we went to LA, and that's where we stayed in LA. In all reality, if we had come in the summertime, we probably would have stayed in Brooklyn. But my mom had family in Brooklyn, in New York City. But so in Harlem, 1999, my boy, we took a Greyhound, got to Grand Central Station. Is it Grand Central? Yeah. I might be checking that up, but whatever. We got to New York City. I'm not a train guy. So got to New York City, and I remember we took the train into Brooklyn. Not into Brooklyn, into Harlem, over by City College, and I just remember we got here at nighttime. It was exhausting, and you're in the outskirts. Kind of like you're in some of the major arteries of New York City, but you're not at the heart yet. At least not the heart that I dreamt about. So I remember the next morning we had breakfast. We were walking. He was like, "Yo, let's go to 125." I'm like, 125? What's 125? I didn't know anything about 125th Street. I knew of it on paper from reading stories about the Harlem Renaissance and about Harlem in literature, but I never heard anybody call it 125. So we got on the train. We make it. We make it to our stop, and we come off the train. It's packed with people, and my brain and senses is just like more overwhelmed by the number of people on the train. I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, how are people able to keep their balance on these trains? We got to the train station. We're coming out of the subway into the main street, and I have to tell you, what I saw froze me. We're coming out the train, out of the station, onto, I want to say we were over by Adam Clayton Powell, at 125. Came out, and I have to tell you, I took the deepest inhale because I had never seen that many black people in one space outside of Africa. And it was funny because I felt totally safe. I felt totally in place. And I felt emotionally like overwhelmed because I saw black men, black women, black children, dreads, afros, some Jerry curls. I know it was 1999, but there are also some Jerry curls out there. But just to see the plethora of just people just moving, the tables on the streets of people, the street vendors, right? All that, the smells and everything, it was just amazing because for the first time in America, I felt like I was in our own place where I felt safe, which is weird, right? To have that kind of natural, overwhelming feeling that pours out of you of saying, okay, you're safe, And whether I was safe or not, that's not even the point because I'm pretty sure I wasn't that safe. But emotionally, my eyes and my brain said, this is your norm, right? And it's funny because the next time I had that feeling was in 2007 when I went back to Nigeria for the first time since I came to America. I came to America in 1988, didn't go back and set foot in Africa again until 2007. And I went there with my mother. I remember we got to the airport in Lagos. And when we came off the plane to the airport, I was like, wow. Same thing. Everybody in the airport. Apart from the foreigners, but I would say 80% of people I saw in the airport, the flight attendants, the pilots, the security, customs, everyone were all looked like me. And it just felt like, okay, if anything would happen here, it's not going to be because of what I look like. It's going to be because of what I did. And that's something that was so important to me. And I say all this to say that you have to make a conscious decision to set foot in an African nation of your choice at some point in time in the near future, if you have the means. Maybe your next vacation is not to, let's go to Madrid. Why? You want to go to Madrid, the architecture, the music, the food, and everything. Okay, then if you really want to go to Madrid, if Madrid is if you want to find Madrid, then go to Morocco. Don't forget the Moors built Spain to what Spain was. These were North Africans. So why don't you just go to the source? Go to North Africa. Go to Morocco. Go to Egypt. Now, if you want to go deeper into the heart of Africa, then Mali, Niger, Sudan, Ethiopia, Kenya. Let's go deeper into the heart. Let's go to West Africa. The cradle of civilization is East Africa. We know the first man, the first woman, the oldest human remains are all coming from East Central Africa, right? But I would argue the cultural foundation, language, the Tower of Babel spoken about in the Bible, to my estimation, has to be in West Africa. Think about this. Nigeria alone has 200 languages, at least. Like you could drive 20 miles and all of a sudden it's a whole different language. You drive 5 miles, you're like, wait a minute, are they even speaking the same language? It's amazing. We have beaches, we have resorts, we have culture. Do not allow the social media and the content that's been transmitted through your public education, through media that's constantly showing a broken down Africa, a backward Africa, to infect your view of Africa. It's also the same way. You'd be surprised how many Africans are saying, no, I'm going to learn about African American culture for myself. And I know it's happening. Let me tell you how I know it's happening. Because all of a sudden now on the same charts that hip hop is dominated, Afro pop is saying, hey, little brother, we're here too. And you're seeing melding of African culture and African American culture in music, in fashion, in literature. But is only happening amongst the population of African beatniks and intellectuals. It's not something that's happening mainstream across all Africans and African Americans, and that's something we got to change. I would love to see an invitation to America, not by the White House, but by the African American power base of this country, the Oprah Winfrey's, the Robert F. Smiths, the Henry Louis, Henry Louis Gates and Cornel West and LeBron James and those people saying, let's have a summit of Pan-African leaders in Atlanta. Let's talk about how we can really partner. Shout out to Sister Serena Williams, who is actually taking her venture capital fund and targeting Africa, putting millions into African companies, in technology, in different avenues. But she's saying this is the future of this planet. It's what's happening in Africa. I've said a lot this evening, and I hope that my words were not offensive to anyone. If they were, I'm sorry. Those were my words. And I'm not apologizing. I'm not sorry. Those were my words. But also do know that everything that I say comes from a place of love, a place of constant pondering on how this experience called life could be richer, stronger, more powerful for the zero class of this country. And I'm part of it. It doesn't matter how many degrees I have. It doesn't matter what I've accomplished. I'm still zero class. Because when I walk into Ashley's and I just want to buy a mattress, and the first thing that I'm told is, no, we don't have that. And as soon as they see that, oh, I was really there to buy a mattress. Oh, no, come back. That's some fucked up shit. But I went to back to the first store, and my Ghanaian brother greeted me with a smile, a huge smile. Had me take the mattress to the car, opened the door, shook my hand and said, have a good Christmas, my brother. I said, have a good Christmas too. My regards to your family. That's the kind of experiences I want us to all have all the time with each other. Not just walking by with head nods. Or, why that end looking at me? But rather us pouring into each other, reconnecting those bonds. Because the blood doesn't lie. The blood runs through my veins. The blood runs through every African veins, down to our original mother and father, the original Adam and Eve, in the cradle of civilization, which is at the heart of Africa. Thank you again for joining me this evening for the Sneaker Principle podcast. I appreciate you. I send mad love to you. Be well. I hope you enjoy this holiday season, this break to rejuvenate, to not just physically but spiritually as well. Tap into the ancestors. Spend some time meditating. Spend some time with the family. There's an old saying that says, show me a man's children and his wife, and I'll tell you how rich he is. So, fathers, make sure you're spending time with your families. Listen, I know marriages don't always work out, and maybe or relationships don't work out, but be there for your children. Be a presence for your children. Mothers, create that space for him to be there, even if it's just for this season, for a short period of time, because it means a lot. It means a lot to our children. And with that being said, thank you so much. Be well. And good night.
And now he's been promoted. His job, principal.